Welcome back to another Bali COVID-19 update. This is December 19th, 2021, and my name is Bruce. Selamat siang. And it is about to rain, so I'm trying to get the end in here quickly. And if I have a chance, I'll turn it around, the camera around before it rains. A lot of stuff today, and as usual, a lot of stuff that I left out, and some of that will be in the video on Wednesday. Today is Sunday, wow. And in the end, the wrap-up update, there's a little information about the coronavirus in Indonesia, an update on that. Okay, let's get right into the numbers. I want to get this done before it rains. Good news again, I'm pumped, okay? It's another week that I'm pumped. Even though Omicron is in Indonesia, I'm still pumped. 7-day average for new positive cases, 4. So the other day it was 7, now it's down to 4. And the 7-day average for deaths, 0.6, so holding steady there. New positive cases throughout Indonesia, 232, so up a little, but this is daily count, right? So that goes up and down, and deaths, 12. The total number of people tested in Indonesia, 216,405 with a 0.11 positive rate. 7-day simple average positivity was 0.10. All right. And what about in Bali in testing? Bali tested 48,552 individuals over the last 7 days, and the 7-day positivity rate was 0.06. And what about those vaccination numbers? And this is so cool. So first dose, 3,556,106, 79.6% of the population. That's the total population, not the target population. So we are just at 80%, just below 80%. And so that's it, that's cool. Second dose, 3,079,683, 68.9% of the population. Inching up. The other day, I think it was 68.8%. So we're moving up slowly and totally vaxxed. And yesterday, 21,248 additional doses were administered, and that includes the kiddies who are being vaccinated. And my granddaughter is going to get vaccinated on Monday, and she's not real happy about it. What about yesterday in Bali? New cases, 4, yes. And deaths, 0. So 4 new cases, 0 deaths, and active cases in Bali, get this, 98. We're down below 100 on active cases. The numbers are looking so good, and wow, the wind is picking up and the clouds are getting here. Okay, let's see if I can get this in here. And so, let's take a look at what's happening with Omicron and what President Jokowi has to say. And as everybody is most certainly aware of by now, Omicron has come to Indonesia. And the president said, well, it's inevitable that it was going to come here, but that the public should not panic. At this point, around 80 countries in the world already have the Omicron variant, and that includes our neighbors, Malaysia, Singapore, and Australia. The president said that now that we've discovered Omicron, we should try our best to prevent it spreading widely in Indonesia. We don't want to see any community transmissions happening. It's important to be on alert, but we should not panic, because so far Omicron has not shown any characteristics that could endanger patients, especially those who have been vaccinated. And so, of course, he advised people to get vaccinated as soon as possible, and also not to travel abroad at this period. And the president also asked for local authorities to improve their tracing and testing abilities. And so, if you haven't heard, where did the Omicron variant come in? Well, the first case was found in a cleaning service worker at the former Athletes Village in Jakarta that was converted into a COVID-19 facility, a quarantine facility, and emergency hospital last year in the wake of the coronavirus outbreak. The patient, who's only being identified as N, and it's most likely for his safety and sanity, had no history of traveling overseas. But according to Pak Budi, the health minister, It's likely that he was exposed to the virus by coming in contact with international travelers who were isolating in the athlete's village. Okay, so that means somebody brought it in. Who brought it in? According to this article, it remains unclear whether or not authorities have traced the patient who transmitted the virus to N. And Booty said that N was asymptomatic and that the latest PCR test showed he's now negative for coronavirus. In addition to N, the government's found 5 other suspected cases of Omicron through a special type of PCR test that can detect the S gene target failure, which is one of the identifiers of the Omicron mutations. And so who are these suspected carriers? 2 are Indonesian residents who have just returned from the UK and the US, and the remaining 3 are Chinese nationals who are visiting Manado. Okay, and they are now in quarantine in Manado. And so hopefully the government is out there doing their best to figure out who has done what and gone where. He said the government so far has not discovered any indications of community transmission and that the 5 suspect cases have all been put into quarantine. And where are we with Omicron? Well, more research still needs to be done, and it looks just like it looked last time. It's highly transmissible, but less severe than the Delta variant. That's the good and bad news. The transmissibility is not good news, but that it's less severe is. New studies, however, in the US, UK, Hong Kong, South Africa, and Israel found that COVID-19 vaccines appear to offer significantly less protection against the Omicron variant, but that a booster likely restores most of the protection. Okay, so this is concerning. And since Omicron was first discovered in South Africa, there's only been 1 death so far that's been publicly released anyway. And so what is Indonesia doing about this? Well, according to the health minister, the government will now conduct genome sequencing of at least 10% of all positive samples nationwide, which is twice as much as the previous rate. The government's also planning on expanding its COVID-19 booster program to include all members of the general public next month, with priority being given to immune-compromised people and the elderly. The Transportation Ministry, in the meantime, will be closely monitoring all of the prevailing health protocols and all modes of transportation, both domestic and international, and at points of entry. And according to our old friend epidemiologist Dickie Budeman, he warned that the government needs to handle the situation very carefully because Omicron may pose more of a threat to Indonesia's healthcare system than the Delta variant because of the high transmissibility. And he added, authorities should also monitor all patients who've been discharged from the athlete's village in the past 2 weeks. And public health expert Jandra Yoga Aditama said the government should also accelerate vaccinations. And so that's where we're at right now with Omicron. I don't see anybody panicking yet. And the latest word from the Balinese government on this is that they're going to follow whatever the central government said. So no new restrictions as of Sunday. So what about quarantine? COVID-19 task force gives stern warning for health quarantine violators. And so according to the COVID-19 task force spokesperson, Pak Wiku said that the task force will be closely monitoring quarantine facilities for international visitors to prevent people from escaping such facilities before serving the entirety of their quarantine. Pak Wiku said that it should be made clear to visitors that they will be taken to court if necessary. And he said that because of the current state of Omicron, and this came out before the first case of Omicron was reported here, because of Omicron, it makes health quarantine more important than ever as it prevents imported cases from spreading in Indonesia. Already here, and I don't know, we're going to have to see how this is going to work out. And Pak Wiku said, every individual in Indonesia is responsible for the condition of the country's COVID-19 situation. Be a good example for fellow Indonesian citizens, he said. So that is the key there when I thought, well, okay, this is just foreigners that he's coming down on. He's coming down on anybody coming in from outside who's in the quarantine and is trying to skip. So don't mess with quarantine. Vaccines and vaccinations. Parents must report adverse reactions to COVID-19 task force. Parents can and should report adverse events following immunization to community health center or the vaccine center as inputs for evaluation of vaccinations implementation and further handling, according to a spokesperson for the COVID-19 Handling Task Force, Professor Wiku. And he urged parents not to panic if your kid gets sick, such as a pain in the arm, muscle aches, joint pains, chills, nausea, vomiting. Oh, God, I hope not. Fatigue, fever above 37.8 degrees Celsius, as well as flu-like symptoms for 1 or 2 days. Okay, I hope my granddaughter doesn't get this. I hate seeing kids sick and really hate it if they're my own. He added, if there's pain at the injection site, children should keep moving and use their arms to do activities. If needed, compress the painful area using a clean cloth and cold water. More on vaccines and vaccination. Parents are excited, hoping after vaccination can learn normal. Okay, children aged 6 to 11 finally get the COVID-19 vaccine in Buleleng. The vaccination process was carried out simultaneously at 14 points. My granddaughter's school is on Monday. Parents hope that the vaccination of their children will make the teaching and learning process normal again. So everybody's hoping the kids will go back to school 5 days a week, 6-7 hours a day. Right now, my granddaughter is going back to school 5 days a week, 2 hours a day. So this report was about Banjar Jawa, which is just down there at the elementary school. And according to this report, the children were excited about getting vaccinations. Right, I don't know, my granddaughter is not excited about it. And it said they seemed to have fun playing with their friends, but it was the parents that were nervous and worried that their children would cry when they got vaccinated or would get sick, have adverse reactions. And of course I'm concerned about that too. And the adverse reactions, post-immunization adverse events, AEFI. And so parents are worried about it, I'm worried about it. But according to the head of the Buleleng Health Office, Dr. Suchipto, he guarantees the availability of vaccines for children in the 6 to 11 year group, and his team has also prepared to anticipate the occurrence of the AEFI should it happen. And the doctor said he believes that AEFI will be very low because so far there has never been a report of severe AEFI in Sinovac vaccine recipients. He said if there is a reaction, it will only be mild, such as a rash on the arm where they received their injection or a low-grade fever. And so instructions have been given on what to do if your child has that, and if there is a more severe reaction, you need to report it. What about the booster scheme? Health Ministry finalizes 2022 booster dose vaccination scheme. And so the policy is not final and set yet, according to the Health Ministry spokesperson, Siti Nadia Tarmizi, who I've talked about many times. The Health Minister, Pak said that there will be 2 scenarios in distributing the booster vaccine doses. The first scenario will be providing vaccines to the non-senior citizens cash aid recipients, and the vaccination cost in that case will be covered by the government. And another option will be paid vaccinations. In the last video, I talked about the plan to have paid vaccinations, and so this is how the booster will go for most people in Indonesia. Pak Budi said we will open that so pharmaceutical firms can import the vaccines and sell them to the public, which is hoped to introduce balance and accessibility. Options also vary. And in total, Pak Budi said that there will be 83.1 million recipients of the booster vaccine that are funded by the government. And he added, considering the vaccine supplies, Indonesia will need at least 92 million doses for the national booster dose vaccinations. Vaccination brands that would be used will be up to permits and recommendations from the WHO, BPOM, and ITAGI. And so, we'll see what's going to happen with the boosters coming up. We still have a lot of Indonesia to get vaccinated, and then of course we've got the kids. And what's happening around Asia? Well, let's take a look at Singapore first. Singapore braces itself for Omicron wave. More ICU beds to be added, more places open to only the vaccinated. You look at the stuff in this article and you think, wow, Singapore is really got this plan down. Singapore is learning from previous mistakes, and so what are they doing? So far, at the time of this article, Singapore had not detected any community transmissions of Omicron, but according to the Trade and Industry Minister, it's only a matter of time before this happens. And considering the increased transmissibility of the Omicron variant, vaccination differentiated measures will be expanded to more places starting in February 1st. And what are those? I'll talk about those in a minute. At the same time, more people will be able to return to their workplaces, because 97% of Singapore's workforce has been fully vaccinated. 97%. Of course, they've got a small number of people to do this with. Starting on January 1st, up to 50% of those able to work from home will be allowed back in the office. So far, there are 16 Omicron cases detected in Singapore, comprising 14 imported cases and two local cases who are airport service staff. According to the finance minister, all the ministers are getting involved in this one. According to the finance minister, COVID, because of its high transmissibility, could start off a surge even bigger than the one that they had from Delta. To gear up for the next surge, so what is Singapore doing to get ready? Well, to gear up, Singapore is making plans to increase its ICU capacity to 500 beds. And the multi-ministry task force handling COVID-19 will press on with the national booster vaccination, ramping up healthcare capacity and promoting regular testing. And one thing, general practitioners will play a bigger role in helping to manage COVID-19 patients who are able to recover at home and don't require hospital care. Also, the country's prepared to increase capacity in the community treatment facilities so that hospital patients in stable condition can be transferred there in case there is an Omicron surge. And 60 quick test centers run by private operators will be opened up to make COVID-19 testing more accessible. And what about the vaccination differentiated measures that I talked about a minute ago? Well, that means that people that aren't vaccinated are going to be restricted in their settings. And if you're going to want to go everywhere, you're going to need to be fully vaxxed. And this includes all indoor sports facilities, institutes of higher learning, and leisure guests in hotels, hostels, and service departments. All events, even those with fewer than 50 people, will also be subject to these requirements, and this includes funeral memorial services and work-related events. Funerals, wakes, and funeral processions will be limited to 30 people at any one time. And the quarantine-free land travel scheme between Singapore and Malaysia will be expanded to allow vaccinated Singapore citizens to enter Malaysia via the causeway starting on Monday. That's tomorrow. And similarly, Malaysian citizens will also be able to enter Singapore. Wow, impressive, Singapore. So it's going to be a quiet New Year for us. What about Thailand? Well, New Year planning begins. The country's major tourist centers, Bangkok, Pattaya, Phuket, and Chiang Mai, are in the festive mode. They're getting ready for a Happy New Year. The government is relaxing COVID-19 control measures, and alcohol will be able to be served until 1 a.m. on New Year's Eve. The rule relaxation by the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration, CCSI, has been welcomed by everybody in the tourist industry in Thailand, I'll bet. Pattaya is going to have a major celebration the 29th to the 31st at the Bali High Pier. Okay, I've never been in Pattaya. All my time's been in Bangkok or Chiang Mai. And there will be popular artists to entertain visitors. According to the chair of the Thai Chamber of Commerce, he welcomed the decision by CCSA to ease up restrictions, but he also urged the government to accelerate COVID-19 immunization in the provinces in order to boost confidence in Thailand's ability to deal with the virus, especially the Omicron. And if you really want to party, go to Phuket, because Phuket aims to offer revelers the maximum time limit in terms of celebrating New Year's Eve with alcohol. According to the Deputy Provincial Governor, a provincial order has been issued to extend alcohol time serving at restaurants from 11 to 6 on December 31st. So, wow, you can party all night. Thailand looks like the place to be if you're going to be in Southeast Asia for the New Year's. But I guess I'm just going to spend a quiet evening at home. So 2 videos ago, I was talking about some possible actions and demonstration by groups in the Bali tourism business, and I've been wondering since then what's happening, and so there's several segments on this today. So let's see, what does the government have to say about this? Tourism activists threaten action to take down the road. This is the response of the Bali Provincial Government. According to the Regional Secretary of Bali Province, Dewa Made Indira, he said the government is taking the threat of action very seriously. He said the government understands very well that people are frustrated and that they have complaints about the situation here. He also mentioned that it's necessary to be vigilant about dealing with the new variant of COVID-19, Omicron, that is in Indonesia and, well, maybe here soon. He said the vigilance is necessary because of the transmissibility of the new variant and what it could do to all that Bali's done so far in order to get to where we are now with these great numbers. He said, by working together to overcome COVID-19 with restrictions, hopefully new variants do not come to Bali. We can control COVID-19, and because of that, the economy can move forward towards economic recovery. And you remember previously, the governor asked people to be patient. Well, the chairman of the Bali Tourism Board, Ida Bagus Agung Partha Adnyana, said that patience has a limit. And so he said, in this case, the public's annoyance must also be treated with pro-people policies. And I'm going to be talking about in a coming video. And then he continued on and discussed things that I've already discussed before about how events could be held in the open in order to avoid enclosed spaces and super spreader events. But that's not going to happen. At least at this point, it doesn't look like it. And this is the 19th, and so Christmas is, what, 6 days away? Christmas Eve, 5 days away. And New Year's, well, another week after that. So that doesn't look like that's going to happen. So let's take a look at the next segment and see just what's happening there. And here is another on what I reported 2 videos ago about trouble in paradise. And well, now here is kind of a response to that. It's interesting. There's things going on obviously behind the scenes that aren't being reported on, and haven't heard anything from the president about this. And the governor did make a comment that I already talked about. PHRI Badung is looking for the culprit of the deserted tourists to Bali, making proposals to the center. Okay. What a weird translation. The anxiety of Balinese people, especially those engaged in tourism, is difficult to contain. Yes, because ahead of Christmas they expected to make some money, and then when the restrictions were put into place, whoa, it looked like they weren't going to make any money. And video coming up on the number of people coming in. So following this one. So PHRI Badung held a meeting to find out what is behind the lack of foreign tourists, as well as looking for a way to get the foreign tourists to come. And what is PHRI? PHRI is the Indonesian Hotel and Restaurants Association. And so they met with a number of people, including some government people. And who was there? The head of Badung BPPD and Bali Provincial Government expert group in the field of tourism, and the acting head of the Bali Province Tourism Office. So they got some big guns there. Why? Well, it doesn't say here, but if you read carefully here, you can see this is in response to threatened demonstrations. So the deputy chairman of the Bali Province PHRI, Agung Rai, said that the purpose of the meeting was to discuss a draft proposal which would be submitted to the governor and then submitted to the central government relating to the problems in Bali with zero foreign tourists. Okay, so right away, what are they doing? They're doing the chain of command, right? The letter directly to the president was not in the chain of command, and boy, it got people upset. What did the deputy chairman say? We must act. We must not be silent. We must be one voice in submitting proposals to the center. But what we speak is the voice of peace. You have to read between the lines when you look at what's being said here in Indonesia. You always have to read between the lines. And so this is a response to the possibility of demonstrations. According to Agung Rai, the provincial government of Bali is an extension of the central government and has done a lot to accelerate the recovery of Balinese tourism, such as vaccinations. And here it's claimed that Bali has reached 90%, and they're using the target rate, not the actual numbers. And furthermore, he said the Bali Provincial Government is currently fighting for how to make it easier for foreign tourists to enter Bali. Of course, by continuing to apply strict procedures. So we're looking for some middle ground here. We must support and do our best to maintain the comfort and conduciveness of Bali, he said. And according to him, there's been an increase in domestic tourists coming in. The number reached 22,000 a day, consisting of 12,000 by air and 10,000 by land. And so, right, there's a segment coming up next on this. And according to him, the careful efforts made by the Bali Provincial Government are in the context of a bigger goal, namely maintaining the image of Bali and Indonesia in the eyes of the world, especially in the context of the 2022 G20 conference. And so the 2022 G20 conference is a big, super big deal. We're going to be hearing about it all year. We're hearing about it now, and it's not for another, 10 months? So Agung Rai said, and here's some more reading between the lines, we must support the government's great effort in the revival of Bali tourism. Do not carry out activities that can damage Bali's image in the eyes of the world. Here's the response, not from the governor, not from the president. This is from a collective group, got together, and they're saying, forget it. No demonstrations. Good news. 20,000 wisdom predicted to visit Bali during Nataru holiday. What are wisdom? They're domestic tourists. I like this wisdom. It's funny. Okay, I'm in a good mood again. Why am I in a good mood? Omicron is here. I don't know. It's a beautiful day. I had a 2.5-hour walk making a video, Singaraja Snippets video. I had a lot of fun talking to people, joking around with kids who are hanging around, adults. My granddaughter's coming back from parents in a couple of days. Yeah, I'm pumped again. The numbers are down. News, 20,000 wisdom predicted to visit Bali during Nataru holiday. So this prediction was made by the chairman of the Indonesian Hotel and Restaurants Association, which I just talked about, PHRI Badung I Gusti Ngurah Surabaya. And he said from this week, the number is almost 13,000. And I believe there will be an increase. And wait for that increased number. My prediction is it will be 15 to 20,000. There's that 20,000 number again. All right, we had 20,000 this with 20,000 that, and 20,000 is back again. If somebody can explain what is magical about 20,000, I would really appreciate it. Leave a comment below, please. And the chairman said that if they do get this amount of tourists, hotel occupancy rate is expected to increase by 50 to 60%. Well, that's really good news. Because as I've heard from a certain job seeker who happens to be very close to me and just graduated with a degree in hotel management, there ain't no jobs at hotels right now, especially for new people. So what did he say? He said, I advise the public as well as tourism players to apply strict health protocols. Hopefully after Nataru, positive cases of COVID-19 will remain sloping and in single digits, and we all hope for that. And in addition, Pak Sriwijaya said that in order to facilitate the arrival of tourists to Bali, he has proposed that loosening the policy requirements for tourists, especially in relation to the quarantine, would be removed. He said, of course, we only do this if the PCR results of foreign tourists are negative. But as we're seeing with the Omicron cases now, sometimes they show up really late after they've been infected. And so, well, I don't know. Right now, this is Friday. I'm filming early for Sunday's upload. I'm not sure what the response is going to be in terms of, are they going to tighten the borders, close the borders, shut down foreigners coming in? Foreigners haven't brought anything in yet. I don't know. There's a lot of ifs right now. Maybe that will be made clear by Sunday. He said foreign tourists should no longer need to be quarantined, especially now that Bali's entered a green zone. Other things that he said are inhibiting tourism, being limited to 1,500 people, and using a sponsor. And he said if you come to Bali, for example, tourists are difficult to find sponsors. and it can be applied again to visa on arrival. In other words, he would like to open up the VOA, the visa on arrival. He said, and flight policy, because that needs to be revised and not be burdensome. Right now, it's only direct from the origin country, and so it's impossible for planes to come in here, large planes, when they don't have enough passengers. And he said a number of these proposals would be passed on to the governor. Okay, people have gotten the message. Go to the governor first, not to the president. Worried about people coming in, especially with Omicron here? Well, note, entering Bali, document inspection in Gilimanuk tightened. Gilimanuk port is one of the main entrance points to Bali from Java. And according to an observer, 2 counters were prepared to validate negative test results for COVID-19. The counters also check vaccination documents. All bus passengers, private cars, and motorbikes are required to get off to validate. And a bus passenger from Surabaya on his way here to Bali said he did a rapid antigen test in Java and paid 70,000 rupiahs. And he's got his PL working and he's all set to go. So he got his documents in order because he wants to get to Bali for some reason. And so if you are planning on coming into Bali, you can expect to have tightened security, tightened restrictions. We'll have to see how that actually works out in fact. Okay, there is just so much news, and it is really windy today. And I took a long walk, and there'll be a video that I said about last week, but I had to do it all over again. Long story. We'll leave it for a different time. And so let's get right into it. Buleleng, okay, my favorite place. New Year's Eve celebration, green open space in Buleleng closed. And I just touched on this the other day when I was talking about the rules for this time, the 24th to the 2nd. Well, here it is about Buleleng. So the closure is expected to keep crowds from gathering and to prevent the possible spread of COVID-19. And now that we have Omicron in Indonesia, well, people are going to be more worried than ever. And, well, look back at the story about Omicron if you want to know more about that. So this decision was taken when the Buleleng COVID-19 Handling Task Force had a coordinating meeting in the Regent's office on Wednesday, and the meeting was chaired by the Regent of Buleleng, Pak Agus. They decided that in a follow-up to the instructions from the Minister of Home Affairs, that one of the policies taken will be to close a number of public facilities, namely green open space, RTH. We don't have that much green open space in Singaraja. So it said in total there are 4 public facilities that will be closed. Singaraja Park, commonly known as Taman Kota, and Sunda Kecil, Yowana Asri, and former Buleleng Port area. That's right over there by my house. And usually Singaraja Park and Buleleng Harbor are always the center of crowds on New Year's Eve. Yes, they are. And I've talked about that before. Maybe I'll have to look at my video of 3 years ago to enjoy the fireworks. So in addition to closing all these places in Singaraja, Pak Agus has instructed all districts to follow the same steps. Public facilities that have the potential to become gathering places and possible spreading places for COVID-19 should be temporarily closed. The Deputy Chair of the Buleleng COVID-19 Handling Task Force, Lieutenant Colonel Windra Lisrianto, said the security forces will be closely monitoring public places and tourist attractions. And according to him, they've mapped out several places of possible gathering. And in addition to places here, Singaraja Park, Taman Kota, and Buleleng, Pelabuhan, there are several other points. And among those points are Lovina Beach and Penambangan Beach, or commonly known as PP. And so security forces will be there along with Pachalang, and they will strictly monitor the locations. He said, we don't want these locations to become clusters. We hope that the community and administrators will be able to implement the health protocols so that everyone feels safe and comfortable. Okay, so like I said, no fun. Have to have your fun at home on New Year's Eve. And in a previous video, I talked about what Buleleng is doing in terms of New Year's. Well, what about Tabanan Regency? So Tabanan is also going to close public areas, tourist sites on New Year's Eve. So according to the COVID-19 Task Force Secretary for Tabanan, Gede Susila, 3 public open spaces will be off limits, including Bung Karno Park, Lapangan Alit, and Lapangan Debes. These closures will take effect for 2 days, starting on New Year's Eve and including January 1st. And he appealed to local task forces to prevent clusters of COVID-19 infection in tourist sites and ensure the massive use of the Peduli Lindungi app, which nobody has been doing so far. And he concluded the local government would be ready to take precautions by encouraging COVID-19 vaccination and implementation of health protocols to prevent cases of the Omicron variant. So we've seen 2 of the regencies announce specific places that are going to be closed over the New Year's period, and I'm sure all of the other regencies are doing the same. So if you're planning on anything, there's not going to be much happening for New Year's Eve. So at this point, well, what are you going to do? You can stay home, you can watch Netflix. If you have Netflix, you can watch a video, you can play with your kids, you can pretend it's Nyepi. You can watch some old fireworks like this photo, or you could go out and have dinner and find a place that's not too crowded and have a few drinks and enjoy yourself. Unfortunately, it does not look like we're going to be partying hard like in the previous segment on Thailand. And more on Bali and changes again. And so I briefly mentioned this in an earlier video when I was talking about the new plan for the rest of the year, that reports would not be issued, school reports would not be issued until next year. Well, it's been changed again. Reports change again, back to December 18th, 2021. Government policies are constantly changing. Previously, it was stated that the distribution of report cards for the first semester was postponed to January 22nd. I just got my granddaughter's report today. They called us and said, you have to come and get it. We're giving them out now. And it was really good, so I'm really happy. And so the reports have returned to the way that they originally distributed according to December 18th. So that was the plan, and then it was changed, and now it's been changed back again. So the central government officially revoked the rules for distributing report cards for semester 1 again. And well, kids are on vacation. Apparently some kids aren't. I saw a bunch of kids in school uniforms today. So Zoe's school is on vacation, but Zoe goes to a private school here. The reports are issued, and my granddaughter got some good reports, A and all B's, so I'm happy. Okay, I'm a happy grandpa. Time for wrap-up update. Okay, long day today. We're gonna make a real short one. Okay, first off, numbers are great, and even better than being great, they're stable. So we've been stable now for weeks, and that is such good news. With all this good news and these low numbers, I think there's going to be more calls for relaxing restrictions here to get people in. The good news is there are domestic tourists here. Not tons of them, but there are, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So while I've got a feeling there's going to be calls for loosening things up, the government has said that they are staying firm. They are going to keep with the mobility restrictions during the end of the year holidays, despite the good numbers and despite Omicron too. So they're not going either way. They're staying steady. They're not going to increase them because of Omicron, and they're not going to lighten them up because of the great numbers here in Bali. The Vice President said on Friday, we'll ensure that PPKM is implemented in the regions according to their level of risk. Although these levels are adjustable, we will not ease prevailing curbs until January. So, ain't gonna happen. And what about Omicron in Indonesia? So there was one case, the N fella, and now there are 2 new positive cases, confirmed cases. and those go along with some other suspected cases. So we have 3 confirmed cases, and spokesperson for COVID-19 Vaccination Ministry of Health said that the 2 patients were the results of examinations of samples from 5 probable Omicron cases who just returned from abroad. We've got people bringing them in, and we're going to be having more people coming in over the next few weeks, according to what the government said. The 2 most recently confirmed cases, a 42-year-old male coming from South America and a 50-year-old male coming from England. Both of them are currently under quarantine. And, okay, complaining about the quarantine, the 2 newest patients were confirmed by Omicron after undergoing mandatory 10-day quarantine after returning from abroad. This shows that the government's protection system is running well to prevent contagion from immigrants from abroad who are infected with the COVID-19 virus, according to Ibu Tarmizi. And what about Omicron itself? I'm going to talk more about that on Wednesday. British researchers said they've found no evidence that the Omicron variant is less severe than Delta. Okay, this is the first one. Remember, everybody is saying it was way more transmissible, but less severe. Now they're saying they don't know about that from what they've seen, and this is a really small study, and more research is being done, so let's not jump to any conclusions yet, but that's why governments are being careful about this, because they don't know exactly what's going on with Omicron. Okay, and domestic tourist numbers. According to information from the airport, 150,000 tourists from different parts of Indonesia flew into Bali during the first 2 weeks of December. And according to a spokesperson for the airport management, they are expecting to get more as we get closer to the holidays. And these numbers represent a 36% increase over last month, the same period last month. And so we're getting about 10,000 people a day coming into Bali for the first 2 weeks. And there are several segments that I hope you watch about the government's response to the tourism groups who said that they may have demonstrations at the end of the month or early next year. It looks like the government and big players in the tourism industry have worked hard to head off any potential demonstrations in the upcoming weeks. As I mentioned before, everyone wants to make sure that Bali is not perceived internationally as a place where there are problems, where there are big problems between the government and the people. And so that's it for today. Wow, there is just lightning. If you found this video useful, helpful, or even amusing, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Updates are every Wednesday and Sunday. Thanks for viewing. Be kind to someone today. Stay safe. I'll see you on Wednesday.